Certainly. Here's an expanded version of Scene 1, approximately 800 words, maintaining the tone and structure, without adding a heading. The penthouse suite shimmered under soft golden light, each detail carefully curated to scream opulence. Silk curtains fluttered slightly from the breeze creeping in through the balcony doors, which had been left ajar. The city beyond twinkled under the night sky, a sea of glass and secrets, not unlike the one being nurtured inside this lavish room. Daniel Carter leaned back on the velvet armchair, swirling the champagne in his glass like a man too used to indulgence. The bubbles fizzed in lazy spirals, the bottle resting in a silver bucket near the edge of the bed. Everything smelled faintly of roses and ambition. Beside him, Lexi giggled, a high, airy sound that seemed to bounce off the crystal chandeliers and disappear into the corners of the room. She stood barefoot on the marble floor, wrapped in a red silk slip that clung to her like it was afraid to let go. Her hair was tousled in a way that suggested spontaneity, though Daniel knew it probably took an hour to style. Not that he minded. She looked exactly how he wanted her to look. Effortless, young, a refreshing detour from the calculated perfection of his wife. "This place is incredible," Lexi said, walking over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her reflection shimmered on the glass as she looked down at the street below. "God, it feels like we're on top of the world." Daniel rose from his chair and walked over to her, resting his hand lightly on her waist. "That's the point," he murmured against her neck. "No one sees you up here. It's private." Lexi leaned into him slightly. "Are you sure your wife isn't going to show up? You said she was in Europe." Daniel let out a low chuckle, dismissing the thought with a wave of his hand. "Elaine's in the middle of some huge acquisition deal. Half her board is in Milan, the other half's buried in spreadsheets. She barely remembers to eat, let alone track me." Lexi raised an eyebrow. "Still married to the Empire, huh?" Daniel gave a crooked smile. "She married me for power. I married her for the connections. We both got what we wanted." He handed her another glass of champagne, the golden liquid catching the light like liquid fire. "To getting what we want," Lexi said, clinking her glass to his. They drank. For a moment, the room was quiet except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of traffic far below. Daniel's phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up briefly. He ignored it, then it buzzed again, a little more insistently this time. Lexi looked over. "You gonna get that?" Daniel sighed and picked it up. The screen displayed a message from Elaine. "We need to talk. Soon." He stared at it for a moment, his brow furrowing, then quickly locked the screen and tossed the phone onto the bed. "It's nothing. Just business noise." Lexi gave him a look, but said nothing. She took another sip of champagne, trailing a finger along the lip of her glass. "You know," she said softly, "I don't usually do this kind of thing." Daniel turned to her, amused. "What kind of thing?" "Hotel rooms. Married men. Affairs that look like they belong in a bad movie." Her voice was light, but her eyes were steady. Daniel smirked. "It's only a bad movie if we get caught." As if on cue, a knock came at the door. Not loud, not rushed, but deliberate, sharp, polite, yet firm. Lexi tensed. "Room service." Daniel frowned. "Didn't order anything." He walked over to the door, smoothing his shirt and clearing his throat. Maybe the concierge was bringing up a complimentary bottle, or maybe someone had the wrong room. Either way, he wasn't expecting anything serious. Certainly not this late. He swung the door open. And froze. Standing in the hallway, backlit by the soft glow of the corridor lights, was Elaine. Elaine Carter. She was dressed in a sharp white suit, her black hair tied back in a sleek twist. Her heels, ivory, pointed, clicked slightly as she stepped forward. Behind her stood the hotel manager, clearly anxious, holding a bouquet of fresh white orchids in a leather-bound welcome folder embossed with the hotel's crest. Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out. Elaine gave him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her voice, when it came, was calm and cold. "Darling," she said, stepping into the suite as if she already owned it, "I see you're enjoying my new hotel." Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. Not just guilt, something colder. Final. A trap he hadn't even seen being set. Lexi appeared in the background, robe clutched to her chest, her eyes wide and confused. Elaine looked around the room once, her expression unreadable. She turned to the hotel manager. "You can leave us now." The door closed with a soft click, and Daniel Carter realized he had just made the most expensive mistake of his life. Of course. Here is Scene 2, expanded to approximately 800 words without using headings, continuing directly from the moment scene 1 ended. Dash dash dash. The silence in the suite was so thick, it seemed to absorb the sound of the city outside. The lights of downtown flickered through the window like distant alarms, but nothing could interrupt the sharp stillness now settling in the room. Lexi stood motionless near the minibar, barefoot, her robe tightened at the waist like armor. Her lipstick had faded, the sparkle in her eyes had vanished. She didn't know where to look. Daniel's jaw clenched as he watched his wife, unsure whether to speak, beg, lie, or run. Elaine walked slowly across the room, her heels tapping softly on the marble, deliberate, steady, lethal. She didn't bother glancing at Lexi, as though the younger woman didn't even exist. Her attention was solely on Daniel, who remained frozen by the doorway like a man watching a fire consume everything he forgot to ensure. Elaine paused by the dining table and ran her fingers lightly along the edge. "You always did like Bellare," she said casually, almost as if commenting on a dinner menu. "You mentioned it on our anniversary once, remember? Said it had the best skyline view in the city." She turned slightly, finally acknowledging Lexi with a faint tilt of her head. "Now I see why you were so eager to book the penthouse." Daniel swallowed. "Elaine, listen." "Oh, I've done nothing but listen for the last 2 weeks." Her eyes flicked back to him. "To lawyers, to accountants, to private investigators. I even listened to the recording of you making the reservation under a fake name. Imagine that, the CFO of Carter Enterprises using an alias like a nervous teenager." Lexi took a step toward the bedroom, uncertain. "Maybe I should." Elaine cut her off with a calm glance. "That won't be necessary. You're not the problem here. You're just the accessory." Her tone was neither cruel nor kind. It was factual. Lexi stopped moving, her face flushing with a mix of shame and confusion. Elaine stepped around the table, circling her husband like a shark deciding when to bite. "You know what I love about owning something, Daniel. The control. I own this hotel now. Every floor, every hallway, every keycard. I walked through the lobby today, and no one asked me who I was, they just stepped aside. They knew." Daniel's voice cracked as he spoke. "You bought this hotel." She smiled thinly. "Acquired it this morning. Part of the Colburn acquisition you never bothered to ask me about. You assumed I was chasing numbers in Milan. I was finalizing contracts in this very building." His eyes darted to the bed, to the champagne, then back to her. "I didn't know. I swear to God, Elaine. Don't insult my intelligence by swearing to anything." She took a step closer. "You walked into my property, carrying your betrayal-like luggage, and thought you were invisible. That's the part that fascinates me most. Not the affair, the arrogance." Lexi finally broke her silence, her voice small. "I didn't know he was married. I wouldn't have come if." Elaine held up a hand. "I'm not interested in your conscience. You're free to go. My staff will make sure you get a car home." Lexi turned to Daniel, perhaps looking for reassurance, but his gaze was vacant, stunned and sunken. She moved quickly, slipping past Elaine without another word, gathering her heels in one hand and her dignity in the other. The suite door clicked softly behind her. Now it was just the two of them. Elaine stood still for a long moment, the air between them thick and unmoving. Daniel finally stepped forward, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. "I made a mistake," he said, almost whispering. "It didn't mean anything." She laughed, once, short and bitter. "That's the problem with men like you. You confuse consequence with meaning. Affairs always mean something, Daniel. Even if it's just proof that someone you trusted was lying." With a smile. He opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. She turned toward the window, arms crossed lightly. The city lights shimmered across her reflection. "You remember when we started Carter Holdings?" she asked quietly. "We were broke. You were selling real estate out of your car. I worked 16-hour days in borrowed office space. We built everything from the ground up. Together." "I remember," he said softly. "I gave you everything," she continued, her voice calm but hard. "Not just my time, my name, my reputation. And while I was expanding our empire, you were here, playing games in silk sheets." She turned around to face him again. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll find the divorce papers downstairs with the front desk. My attorney's signature is already there. Yours is the only one missing." Daniel's shoulders sagged. "And the company?" he asked. She gave him a long look. "What you built with me, you lose with me. You'll keep your face on the board for now, for public optics. But you have no vote, no leverage, and no future in the empire you tried to betray." Elaine began walking toward the door. "Oh, and Daniel," He looked up. "Next time you check into one of my hotels," she said with a faint smirk, "try not to use your corporate card." She stepped out, heels clicking a final verdict as the door closed behind her. Daniel remained standing, alone, surrounded by champagne, silk, and the ruins of everything he thought he controlled.